On a winter night when the village streets lay wrapped in quiet snow, a single lantern flickered in the cold wind, as if unsure whether to keep burning. Inside a small house at the edge of town, someone sat awake, long after the world had surrendered to sleep. A faint chime drifted through the stillness, soft, almost hesitant, like a memory calling from far away. It was not a sound meant to startle, only to stir something hidden. For a moment, the air felt charged with a meaning the listener could not name, as though the silence itself carried a message waiting to be understood. If this opening moved something in you, stay with the story. And before we continue, remember to subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments which city and country you're watching from. Your voice helps this space grow. The one who kept watch that night was Ethan Miller, a quiet man who lived alone in a small wooden house overlooking the frozen fields. His days were simple, tending to repairs around town, helping neighbors when asked, and returning each evening to a silence that felt heavier than most could imagine. People knew him as capable, steady, polite, but rarely did anyone look long enough to notice the distance in his eyes. Ethan carried a weariness he never spoke of, a heaviness that seemed older than his 35 years. Seasons came and went, yet something in him remained untouched by their warmth or color. He moved through life with measured steps, as if always holding back from a world he did not fully trust. Though kind at heart, he lacked the one thing he quietly longed for, a sense of belonging. His house was orderly, his work reliable, but his spirit felt unfinished, still searching for a place where he could rest without pretending. And as the holidays approached, the contrast between his inner emptiness and the village's bright decorations grew sharper, as though the world celebrated a joy he could no longer reach. Ethan's wound had grown quietly over the years, settling into him like cold seeping through old walls. He had once believed life would unfold with gentle certainty, family gatherings, shared laughter, a hand to hold when winter grew long. But those hopes had thinned after a series of quiet departures, friends moving away, a relationship that faded without confession or closure, a father who passed suddenly one December morning. None of it was dramatic, yet each loss carved a small hollow inside him, and together they shaped a silence he could not escape. Holidays became the hardest days. While others found comfort in tradition, Ethan felt only the ache of what was missing. He avoided gatherings, unsure how to answer questions about how he had been, knowing honesty would expose the loneliness he kept hidden. So he built a life sparse and controlled, believing that expecting little would shield him from further hurt. But beneath his careful composure lived a quiet fear that the world had simply moved on without him, and that he no longer had a place within it. Ethan tried, in his own cautious ways, to mend the emptiness that followed him. He began with simple efforts, joining the villagers for coffee at the bakery, offering help with small tasks beyond what was asked, even lingering a little longer in conversations he once escaped. But each attempt felt stiff, as if he were stepping into a room where everyone else already knew the rhythm, and he alone moved off beat. He tried decorating his home, hoping bright colors might stir warmth inside him. He hung a wreath on the door, placed candles on the windowsill, and even set an old wooden ornament on the table. Yet the decorations only highlighted what he lacked. They glowed gently, but they did not reach him. He attempted to work more hours, thinking busyness might silence his thoughts. Instead, exhaustion amplified them. The evenings felt heavier, the quiet more demanding. One night he even tried writing a letter, to no one in particular, hoping that shaping his feelings into words might ease their weight. But the page stayed mostly empty, his pen hovering as if refusing to uncover what lay inside. With each failed attempt, frustration grew. A quiet despair wrapped around him, whispering that nothing he tried could bridge the distance between him and the life he longed to feel. On a particularly still evening, as frost traced delicate patterns across his window, Ethan heard a soft thud outside his door. When he opened it, he found a small wooden bell carved with simple lines lying in the snow. No tracks surrounded it, no sign of who might have left it. The bell felt warm in his hand, as if it had been waiting for him. As he turned it gently, a faint, almost hesitant chime sounded, clear but fragile, like a voice unsure of being heard. In the quiet glow of his lantern, an elderly woman stood a few steps away. He had seen her in the village before, always carrying a calm presence. She looked at him with a kind, knowing gaze. "It rings," she said softly, "only for those who have forgotten their own hush." Ethan frowned, unsure of her meaning. She smiled, not to explain, but to offer a hint. "Listen not for noise," she murmured. "Listen for the place inside you that has been waiting to speak." Then she nodded once and walked back into the darkness, leaving him alone with the small bell trembling lightly in his palm. That night, Ethan placed the small wooden bell on the table and sat quietly before it, unsure why its presence unsettled him. The room felt different, still familiar, yet somehow more spacious, as if the silence had opened rather than closed around him. He lifted the bell and let it chime once more. The sound was soft, but it lingered, spreading through the room like a fragile thread seeking something hidden. As he listened, memories rose, not dramatic but gentle and human. Moments he had pushed aside, the warmth of his father's hand guiding his as a child, the laughter of friends on a summer afternoon, the quiet contentment he once felt simply watching snow fall. None of these memories solved his pain, yet they reminded him that his heart had known fullness once. Ethan realized the silence he feared was not a void, but a space he had abandoned. It was a revelation, humble in shape, yet immense in meaning. What he sought outside had first to awaken within. Ethan woke the next morning with a subtle but unmistakable shift inside him. Nothing dramatic, no surge of joy, no sudden clarity, just a lighter breath, as if the air had loosened around his chest. He placed the wooden bell in his coat pocket before stepping outside, not for protection, but as a quiet reminder of what he had heard in the stillness. Instead of avoiding others, he walked into town with unhurried steps. He greeted people without forcing brightness, offering simple presence rather than performance. When a neighbor named Clara struggled to carry firewood, he helped without hesitation, not to fill a void, but because the gesture felt natural. At home, he no longer tried to silence the quiet. He let it accompany him while he cooked, repaired a chair, or sat by the window. He had filled it with caution, with the belief that feeling less would protect him, but the bell's trembling note revealed a truth he had long avoided. Pain had not stolen his capacity for connection, his fear had, and in that small, steady sound he sensed a gentle invitation, not to chase happiness or force belonging, but to sit with himself without running, to let the quiet become a place of presence rather than absence. The silence no longer accused him, it supported him, giving space for his thoughts to soften. Small victories appeared, subtle, almost invisible. He felt a touch more patient, a fraction more open. Though still cautious, he no longer braced himself against the world. Instead, he allowed moments of warmth to pass through him without questioning whether he deserved them. It was not a transformation others would immediately notice, but within Ethan, a gentle current had begun to move. A few days before Christmas, a heavy storm rolled across the valley. Wind pressed against the houses, and snow fell in thick, restless waves. The village grew dim, its usual warmth swallowed by the cold. Ethan was returning home from town when he saw Clara's lantern glowing weakly beside the road. Her cart had tipped in the deep snow, and she stood alone, struggling to lift it. For a moment, an old hesitation stirred in him, the instinct to retreat, to let someone else step forward, to believe he had little to offer. The quiet confidence he had been nurturing felt fragile beneath the weight of the storm. The wind howled, echoing the doubts he once allowed to decide his life. He took a step toward her, then paused. The memory of past disappointments pressed in, whispering that he might fail, that he was better suited to the background of life than its demands. The wooden bell in his pocket shifted as he moved, releasing a soft chime barely audible beneath the storm. Yet the sound reached him. It reminded him of the stillness he had touched, of the space within that no fear could erase. But this moment required more than reflection. It demanded action in the face of returning uncertainty. Ethan drew a breath that trembled, feeling both the storm around him and the deeper storm within. Then he stepped forward into the snow, unsure of the outcome but willing, at last, to meet it. The snow kept falling, but something steadied inside Ethan as he reached Clara. Together they lifted the cart, their breaths rising in white clouds. She thanked him with a tired smile, and he felt no awkwardness, no urge to retreat, only a quiet warmth that surprised him with its simplicity. When they walked back toward the village, Clara carried the lantern while Ethan guided the cart. The path was narrow, yet the journey felt lighter than the distance suggested. At her doorstep, she paused and touched his arm gently. "You always show up when it matters," she said. Her words were soft, but they settled deep within him. Walking home, Ethan realized the storm around him had eased. The silence that met him at his door felt different now, not empty, but full of presence, as if the house itself recognized his return. He took out the wooden bell and set it on the table. Its quiet chime echoed softly, no longer a call from the past, but a companion in the present. For the first time in years, Ethan felt aligned with the world around him, still learning, still healing, yet no longer apart from life. The reward was simple yet profound, a peace that did not depend on circumstances, but on his willingness to remain open. The quiet moments we fear often hold the very strength we seek. When we stop running from our inner landscape, we discover that silence is not a void, but a doorway. It asks only for honesty, offering clarity in return. And in that gentleness, we learn that healing begins not with grand gestures, but with the courage to listen to the small places within us that still hope to be heard. In the quiet that followed the storm, the world seemed newly drawn, as if softened by a gentle hand. Snow rested calmly on the fields, and the early morning light touched the edges of the village with a quiet hope. Inside the small house, the wooden bell stood still, its presence no longer mysterious, but quietly reassuring. It reminded that even the faintest sound can guide a weary heart back to itself. And in that softened dawn, the promise lingered that every season, no matter how cold, carries a moment where light finds its way through. In the quiet echo of Ethan's journey, we are reminded that even the softest moments can reshape a life. If this story touched something in you, some small place that still listens for meaning, let it stay with you a little longer. Let it breathe in your own silence. These reflections grow stronger when shared, when they reach others who might be searching for the same gentle clarity. If you felt a spark of truth here, I invite you to support this space of calm storytelling. Subscribe, so you do not miss the next tale that may speak to you. Like this video if the message resonated, and in the comments, share which city and country you are watching from. Your voice becomes part of this circle of reflection, reminding us that even across distances, we can meet in a moment of quiet understanding.